From Diversity Day to Dinner Party to Dwight's Christmas, and everything before, after, and in between. Welcome to Bears, Beats, Bobbleheads, Talkin' Office, the weekly podcast where three brave souls dissect, discuss, and debate each and every episode of The Office in order from pilot to finale. We sincerely hope you enjoy the experience. This is not The Office theme. It's a completely different song, I hope you can tell. This is not The Office theme. It's a completely different song, I hope that the lawyers can tell. 'Cause if not, we're fucked.
Hey, Paul.
Yes, Scott.
Abraham Lincoln once said that if you're a racist, I will attack you with the North. That's, by the way, my favorite Abraham Lincoln quote. I don't know about you guys.
That was the Gettysburg Address, wasn't
it? I think it was at the Frank Hill's Memorial Address. No, I don't. It's funny. That's the only address I know of Abraham Lincoln is the Gettysburg Address. But yeah, I think it was the third line.
I think you're right. Yeah, I remember that from history class.
We are back here on Bears, Beats, Bobbleheads, Talkin' Office, and we are jumping into Diversity Day. Season 1, Episode 2 aired on March 29th, 2005, written by Ryan Howard himself, BJ Novak, and once again directed by Ken Kwapis. And this is a vastly superior episode to the pilot. I would hope that you guys would agree. I'm going to give you the opportunity to agree with me right now. Go ahead.
Oh, God, yes.
Oh, yes.
All right.
Yeah. They should have started with this episode.
Right?
It really has some great Michael moments. And it also has Larry Wilmore.
I fucking love Larry Wilmore.
He is a smart comedian. He's also a writing consultant on The Office, or was. Obviously, it's no longer in production. But yeah, he was a part of the show in that regards, and they decided to bring him in to play the role of Mr. Brown, if that is his real name. He represents diversity today, and it's a training session on how to be a hero in the workplace. I can't remember offhand what HERO stands for. Honesty, empathy, respect, and open-mindedness. That's how you're a hero.
Which Michael's not even sure is a word.
Yeah, Michael is very skeptical of a lot of things in this episode. There's a Diversity Day training because somebody in the office said something that a lot of people decided merited lodging a complaint about. Joe, why don't you tell everybody what was it Michael was doing that was so offensive to everybody?
Well, I don't know if you guys knew this, but maybe white middle-aged men should not be doing Chris Rock routines. Perhaps one of his most infamous one on race.
Yeah, I would say of all the Chris Rock routines that a white middle-aged man should not do, that particular bit is probably number one.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the bet. Yeah. So this routine gets Michael in trouble, and which Michael's not even comfortable calling him Mr. Brown.
Right. Right.
If that's
he thinks it's a test, of course, because that's how Michael would think.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, you go ahead, Joe.
Okay, so just go with the routine and how Michael doesn't really understand it, and he doesn't understand what the problem is with him doing it. Is Larry Wilmore has, of all people, Kevin recite the routine, which that even in an HR scenario in an office, they would not be asking anybody to recite a Chris Rock routine that led this problem to defer. But Kevin's doing it so monotone.
He's doing it monotone, and he's actually, for Kevin, he's being smart about how he does it. He's being very careful with the words he chooses to use. He's getting the point across of what the bit's about without using the language that he would have no right to be using himself, as Michael had no right to be using. But of course, Kevin's butchering of the delivery is a bridge too far for Michael, who cannot help himself but to interrupt and do it all over again right in front of Mr. Brown.
Bleeped out and all.
Bleeped out and all, because he just can't stand to see such great comedy butchered.
He's seething, and then he just bursts.
Yes.
And then the look on Mr. Brown's face with Michael throughout this whole episode, like just the look of shock.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, in the part where Michael wants to try, Michael knows he's in trouble,
Mm-hmm.
and, he's trying to co-run the meeting to cover himself, and Mr. Brown makes him sit down.
Yeah, can we talk about Michael's inability to cede control in the conference room? Because that is definitely something we see a lot out of his character, and that's, I don't know what you would call that, if it's just like that's his stage, and someone else is threatening, command of the stage or something. But that's just, it's always funny to watch him try to like hand over the reins and not being able to do it. He just can't do it.
And we kind of see his anxiety about it too, like at the very beginning of the episode where he's timing his exit of his own office instead of Mr. Brown.
Yes.
They walk out at the same time.
That's a very Ricky Gervais. And then he basically brings Mr. Brown right up to Oscar and tries to make small talk with Oscar. And look how I'm interacting with this minority, is basically what he's trying to do. That was a very David Brentish behavior for sure on the part of the way Michael Scott behaved there, is showing off for the sake of it, for the sake of the camera, and for the sake of especially the black consultant. It's pretty naked, and it's funny, but it's also it's a groaning era, a cringe-inducing type humor.
Now, I do want to say that I've worked a lot of office jobs, which again is why I avoided The Office.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people be that way in conference rooms, where if they're in a conference room, they try to run it every single time they're in there.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that behavior. That is totally classic, real Office behavior.
So going back to the hero bit, it was, I thought, one of Dwight's funniest lines to date when he had to point out that that's not what a hero is. A hero is a part human, part supernatural entity born out of a childhood trauma or a disaster that must be avenged. That's such a Dwight thing to say. That's so Dwight.
And then Mr. Brown calls, like, are you talking about superheroes? And Dwight's response, we all have a hero in our heart. Like, what are you talking about?
Oh, my goodness. So they have the meeting, and then Michael finds out because he is basically refusing to sign the pledge because he says something to the effect of, well, it says I learned something. I didn't learn anything. I knew all this stuff already. If you can say I taught something, I can sign that. Mr. Brown pulls him into the office, and we find out that this was only to not embarrass Michael that this was a meeting that everybody had to take. In fact, his is the only signature that matters. Michael does not like this news.
At all. Yeah.
So what does he do? What does Michael Scott do?
Oh, well, I mean, I know, and this could be a potential fireable offense of signing something like this that HR will need as Daffy Duck when you're not taking it that seriously. Considering he's just a regional manager, that'd be grounds for something.
Yeah. He signs it as Daffy Duck and decides that he's going to hold a meeting after lunch.
Yes. That'll have everyone in tears, and with that teaser, I think we're going to go to our first ad break ourselves, and we will come back and talk about Diversity Day Take 2. We'll be back in a minute. If you're enjoying our Office podcast, be sure to check out Cast That Movie, a podcast where Paul and I, using our superhero aliases, revisit failed cinematic projects from the past and offer up our suggestions for a new visionary and a new cast that would make that project a success. We then think up a dream project based on real events that we would like to see made into a film, and we cast that as well.
We also play games, talk about the latest casting news, and have a all-around swell time. We also seem to always find our way to talking about Clint Howard for some reason. Check out Cast That Movie on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or at our home at thejoedown.blog.
All right, welcome back to Bears Beats Bobbleheads Talkin' Office, and we are talking Diversity Day, Season 1, Episode 2. So when last we left it, Michael had announced that they will be having a new diversity training as Mr. Brown has left, and Michael just cannot stand that he was not able to run the first training session, which was only because of his comments. So we have Diversity Day Take 2, as the big banner in the conference room reads.
Yeah. We have a video.
Well, before we get to the amazing video, because this is one of my top 10 favorite characters, probably top 5. So everybody come in the conference room, and we meet Toby from HR.
Toby Flenderson. Just a perfect name. A perfect name.
It's a perfect HR name. And
Yeah.
it just sets, like, Paul, you'll find out, like, it doesn't dull. Michael's rage of Toby continues.
And the weird thing is that Toby kind of made a joke, and Toby's not much for making jokes. So it's a weird way of meeting him where he's, expecting us all to sit Indian style. I mean, it's not a good joke, and that's what offends Michael, of course. In fact, he says that it was offensive and lame, so double offensive. And then I think my favorite line of the episode that just kills me every time is Michael's next line to Toby, which is, "This is an environment of welcoming, and you should just get the hell out of here."
That's such a brilliant line.
It is such a brilliant line.
So incredible. Like,
Adding the hell out of here, too. Just
yeah. So, so the video, you had mentioned the video made by Michael, obviously minutes before the meeting. And he introduces his new training company, I guess you'd call it, called Diversity Tomorrow, because today is almost over.
Jesus Christ.
And then he gives that brilliant Abraham Lincoln quote. Like I said, my favorite Abraham Lincoln quote. And that's basically the entire video.
yeah, he also puts his leg up on a chair, too.
Puts his leg up on a chair.
Casual.
As you do. That's another thing, that the introduction of Michael's love of making poorly produced videos for the sake of situations like that. They are always brilliant and always funny. This one being no exception. But Jim's response of "is that it?" Was basically, I think, what anybody in that position would be thinking was, "Is that really what you spent your time making?"
Right?
Yeah.
I thought that was a brilliant line. I just thought that was hilarious that he got called out on making a video in less than an hour, and it was just like 2 seconds long.
Yep.
And who brings up the audio's pretty bad, too? Was it Kevin?
And then Michael basically blames Dwight, and Dwight kind of looks, ashamed and kind of shrinks in his seat, and Dwight is always Michael's right-hand man. We haven't even talked about, I don't think we even brought up last episode, the assistant to the regional manager bit, which I forgot, honestly, that was part of the British one. I forgot that until I rewatched it before the pilot episode, before we did our review of that, or our rundown of that. But yeah, Dwight is as loyal a number 2 as you'll ever find, and it hurts all the more when Michael criticizes something that he does when all he wants to do is help Michael.
It's the dynamic with Michael and Dwight. Paul, you'll find out it's not a healthy relationship between these two. I think you can just tell from this episode it's not a healthy relationship.
Yeah. I don't think Michael has healthy relationships, is what I'm gathering.
Yeah. Well, we have a moment where Kelly needs to leave for a customer meeting, to which Michael replies, "Well, if you leave, we'll only have 2 left."
Oh,
Oh, boy.
Oh boy.
And then he kind of reads the room and realizes he shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. And that's kind of his thing, right? Is he says it, and then it's not that he feels bad for saying it. He sees it just didn't go over well, so he kind of almost shrugs off that he even said it.
Yeah, Michael's one of those people who does not think before he speaks. He just unfiltered, whatever pops in his head comes from his mouth.
Yeah.
So Michael starts his Diversity Day Take 2 meeting by announcing that he is part English, Irish, German, and Scottish. So basically, United Nations. Oh, and he's 2/15 Native American.
Yeah, which Oscar in accounting is 2/15 doesn't make any sense.
And he would know, he's in accounting. But yeah, again, Michael shrugs that off.
Yep.
He doesn't want to talk about it. It's painful for him to talk about.
Yep.
So instead, he turns it around and asks Oscar about his heritage.
Oh God.
And then asks the very inappropriate question, is there a term besides Mexican you prefer? Something less offensive?
Something less offensive than Mexican. Jesus Christ.
Oh,
And I just love Oscar. He's dumbfounded. And he just says Mexican isn't offensive. And Michael has a look like he doesn't believe him.
Oh my God.
and then I believe he says, well, doesn't he say something depends upon in certain contexts
Yeah,
or
it
something?
depends
Like
on
what
context.
context?
Oh my
Context,
God.
Michael. So then we get the game with the cards.
Oh my
See,
Jesus.
we gotta stir the melting pot a bit.
We got to stir the melting pot. This is Michael's idea of
Diversity Day.
getting to understand other cultures is by a room of primarily white people putting cards on their heads of different races, or not even races in some instances.
Well, Michael has MLK on his.
Yeah, he has Martin Luther King. He's not a race.
And neither I don't think Jamaican is a race either, is it last I checked? But that's what Angela's wearing on her forehead.
He puts stereotypes on there.
Yes.
That's what he's doing. And then
And
he's stoking the fire. He wants them to start being racist at each other.
Oh my God. Ratchet
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, so Pam, who's Jewish, on the card on her forehead, I don't believe her character is Jewish, and Stanley, who is black and is also got a card on his forehead that says black,
The
by
black
Jan.
card. You got the black card.
Yeah, and Michael's like, he's really pushing him. He's like, Olympics of suffering, slavery versus the Holocaust.
Well, he even screams, "Stir the melting pot, Pam!"
And it makes you wonder, what kind of cathartic outcome is he looking? What does he expect? I think he's obviously going into this irresponsibly. Like, that goes without saying. That's how he goes into a lot of his harebrained schemes. But I want to know what was the final outcome that he was looking for, that the kumbaya moment that this exercise was going to produce.
Yeah, that's the mystery of this.
Yeah, there's no way this was ever going to end well.
Michael doesn't understand why it won't, even though he's taking him on to perpetrate racial stereotypes. And poor Pam has to give a description of a racial stereotype, and she's just trying to be polite.
Yes.
Right, yes, when she meets with Dwight, who is Asian on his card, and he introduces himself by saying, "Shalom, I'd like to apply for a loan," to her.
Holy shit.
So Dwight's got no issue going right for the jugular in this stupid game. And then she reluctantly says what she believes to be an untrue stereotype just for the purpose of the game, that Dwight, as an Asian, might not be such a good driver. To which, what does Dwight say?
What, I'm a woman?
So in Dwight's mind,
Women are
is
a
a different race.
Women are a different race. Jesus
Which makes you wonder, did Dwight maybe help Michael come up with some of the cards?
He might have.
Oh my God.
And to cap this off, we go to a talking head of Michael, where he says it's too soon for the Arabs to be brought into this. this game. It's too explosive, he says.
Oh,
Holy.
Oh.
maybe next time, balls in their court. It's like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about?
What are you talking about, Michael?
We also get poor Kelly. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Mindy Kaling, one of my favorite writers and actresses. I love the Mindy Project. So she walks in at the wrong time.
At the wrong time.
Right. Oh, right. Because Michael, you're right. He was frustrated because people weren't pushing the boundaries far enough in the stupid game. So he decides to go right at her with a full-throated, terrible Indian stereotypical onslaught.
From a convenience store.
Yeah, like a convenience store Indian
Mm-hmm.
impersonation. Apu on steroids.
Yes.
And she slaps him.
She slaps him, which is so deserved.
Yeah, that was the best way for them to kind of end that scene.
And that scene. I think, again, there was no way it was going to end well for Michael.
And he just looks shocked.
He looks
Yeah.
shocked. Well, and then he says, well, now she knows how it feels to be a minority. Jesus Christ,
goodness.
Michael.
Okay, so yeah, that was I guess maybe that was the cathartic moment. He didn't see it coming, but he arrived at one nonetheless. So before we go to our last break here, there's one other line, highly offensive Michaelism that I do want to highlight that happens towards the end. Michael, wishing his training session had gone better and not understanding why it hadn't, thinks aloud, perhaps we've had some food, like maybe some burritos or some colored greens. And Stanley corrects him, rightfully so.
Rightfully so.
Says it's collard greens. And Michael, in his typical Michael fashion, says, no, we don't call them collared people. That's offensive.
Oh, God, yeah.
It's funny, though. It's funny.
It's funny because it plays to the ignorance, but my God, you're laughing at him, not at, you know what I mean?
We're not laughing with Michael.
No, we're not laughing with him. We're laughing at him.
Yeah, I mean, The Office has become one of those shows where you have to just unapologetically take a stand and say, we understand what the humor is trying to do. We understand who the target of the humor is, and many of the times, especially with Michael, he is the target, even though he's the one saying it, because we're laughing at how much of a bumbling idiot he is and how ignorant he is at things and how he tries and fails miserably to be a better person, especially for the cameras at times and panders and things like that. So yeah, I mean, we're not going to spend every episode here going over, how culturally insensitive Michael is and how we shouldn't laugh at somebody who's like that, because it's funny. It's funny, and either you find it funny or you don't. If you don't find it funny, odds are you're not listening to this podcast, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we're gonna, I guess, call it quits then on diversity today. I think we covered all of the beats of the episode. We'll take a quick break and come back and talk about our big takeaways, including who each of us thought had the best showing, who kind of won the episode this week. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paul Muad'Dib, one half of the group that does Podcasts Above a Convenience Store, Talkin Twin Peaks, where myself, along with Joe Fremming, dig into the Twin Peaks TV show, the movie, and the books, and the history. As a matter of fact, the latest one is going to be The Secret History of Twin Peaks. So if you enjoy the banter that we have here on the Office Podcast, be sure to check us out on Podcasts Above a Convenience Store, Talking Twin Peaks, which is on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, or you can find us at our webpage home, thejoedown.blog.
Okay, we are back on Bears Beats Bobbleheads, and we are finishing up our talk on episode 2, season 1, episode 2 of The Office, Diversity Day. Joe, your thoughts?
This was a huge step up from the pilot. It felt like this show kind of is getting its legs now. Where Michael's a little less David Brent, which is good. He's more what we're going to get of Michael Scott, which is great. Man, yeah, I just rewatching. I just forgot how over the top Michael is with the whole race relation things in the office, and it was still an uncomfortable at times to watch. But yeah, I enjoyed this a lot, and my MVP, who won the episode, is I'm giving it to Michael. We're setting the grounds for the Michael Scott we get to know.
Mm-hmm. And maybe not the one that we get to love. I think that Michael's got some different traits, but a lot of them are still there in this episode. He stumbles and falls hard on his face in future episodes as well. So I'm going to agree with you there. I think Michael had the best showing. He definitely had the best lines. There were other characters finally had a chance to get some good lines as well, so that was nice to see. But yeah, I mean, just from the Abraham Lincoln thing all the way to the colored greens line, I mean, he got all of the prime lines, no doubt about it. Yeah, it's
Toby, get the hell out of here.
yes. Yeah. My favorite line of the episode. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this is a classic episode, no doubt about it. I'd say my favorite of the first season, although there are still some very good episodes that we have to cover yet for this first season, but this would be my favorite. Now we get to hear from you, Paul, and your first time ever watching it and your reaction to Diversity Day.
Yeah. Well, can I say that Mr. Brown, Larry Whitmore one? Can I say that?
You can, but his name is Larry Wilmore.
Wilmore. I'm sorry, Wilmore. Jesus Christ.
No, that's okay.
I knew that.
You can say whoever you thought won, but I would ask that you give us a reason why you believe that to be the case.
Because to be that straight, I mean, he's setting up the jokes. He's being the straight man to it, mm-hmm. which is what is making some of it so great, is his reaction to what Michael is doing. Mm-hmm. I thought was fantastic comedy.
And I think he plays kind of like the avatar for us in a sense,
mm-hmm.
that he's not used to Michael like everybody else in the office is.
Yeah.
So, like, the look on his face is kind of like the viewer at home, how we're seeing Michael unravel.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like he's the stand-in for us to go, holy shit, and just to see his reaction to it. This was so much better than the pilot. I'm excited to see the next couple episodes, which I'm going to watch them in order. I'm not going to watch them till the day that we record. But it makes me really want to see the next episode, which is really good for a second episode, in a sitcom. Because you guys know this. I'm not a big sitcom guy. This is why I didn't
mm-hmm.
get into the office. Having worked office jobs, I didn't want to watch a show about it. Because there are some things here that are very biting, and like I can relate to the B plot that was going on between Dwight and Jim, because I've seen that happen before.
All on Jim trying to get that sale that he needs so desperately,
mm-hmm. Yes, just swooping in and stealing it. That's such a real thing that happens.
It is, yeah. So that was part of it. Like I can tell there's going to be things going on. Because they've already kind of touched on it both in the pilot and in this episode, that they did some research into what it's really like to work in an office environment.
Mm. Well, that's good. I'm glad that you're, because you got a lot of episodes to go, Paul. So I'm glad you're cautiously optimistic. I will say that I think that is warranted. And I am excited. I'm very excited for you to watch the next episode, Healthcare. That's a good one, too. That's a really good one. Wouldn't you agree, Joe?
Yep, we get it. Not to spoil it, but Dwight becomes a little more Dwightish.
Yes, we get some more development in the Dwight character, and I think you're really going to like it. So, all right, well, that does it for our discussion of Diversity Day, Season 1, Episode 2, and we will be back next week to discuss Season 1, Episode 3, as we just said, called Healthcare. We hope you join us. This is Bears Beats Bobbleheads Talkin' Office. We will talk to you next week. For more podcasts like this one and general pop culture tomfoolery, be sure to visit thejodown.blog. That's thejodown.blog.